Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me start with the issue of the fake fertilizers that was raised, because it has been raised by quite a number of members. And to answer as follows. Number one is that obviously that was an extremely unfortunate thing to do. Mr. Chairman, there are two areas that I find almost reasonable. One of them is the area of seeds, fake seeds, and the other one is fake fertilizers. Because that issue actually affects not only food security, but actually national security. Because if you grow for a whole year, you are growing something and it was fake from the beginning, or you give your cows fake feeds and they die, Mr. Chairman, this is a matter that I would like even to work with this House to create more civility in terms of the penalties that are involved when people sell fake fertilizers, when people sell fake seeds. This is an area where, if approved, Mr. Chairman, I would like to work with this House to create that civility. And to do so, I cannot, sitting here today, talk about what I can do in terms of the farmers who have lost. This is a matter that I would have to go into the ministry, look at it, discuss it with perhaps Treasury, and see what can be done. But I take your point that a loss was made, and somebody benefited from it, but nobody was compensated, for the loss. And it's a matter that I take, and I'll take to heart. Mr. Chairman, on the issue of livestock vaccination, I spoke to it, and I spoke about what I believe. And obviously, sitting in the office, I will have the information at my fingertips. I will be clear. This is a vaccine that is being made locally by Kevavapi. One of the things that I would like to say as a highlight to all the things that I have been asked, including the pesticides that I think Mheshimiwa Ferdinand spoke about, is to say that there will be a rule of thumb that, in my opinion, the ministry, if approved, would adopt. Number one is this: whether GMO, whether pesticide, whether fertilizer, if that product is not being used in its country of origin, it will not be used in Kenya. If it is a fertilizer, if it is a GMO product, if it is a seed.
Do you know the case of Roundup?
Yes, I'm aware of the case of Roundup. I'm conversant with that debate, Mr. Chairman. In fact, there was a luring in Australia, I think it's this week or last week, that was made on the same, where in Australia they said that it is not carcinogenic, but this is something that I will sit with my scientists and my decide that decisions will be made on the basis of science and data. Because it is not enough that I proclaim here, but I can tell you that there will be no product that is going to be sold in this country under my watch in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock that is going to be a product being tested here. We are not guinea pigs. We will not be used by anybody as guinea pigs. I am aware, Mr. Chairman, for example, there are some organizations overseas that are rebranding their products so that instead of coming as the main product which has been banned overseas, they rebrand themselves as another product so that we can pass it here. And I can tell you that we will be as vigilant as we can be to ensure that we protect our farmers as well as our private sector players. In terms of the taxation regime, because I think, Honorable Member, that's what you are referring to. Yeah, the regulations and the many things that you have to pay. You have to pay for research, you have to pay for transport, you have to pay just to be able to export. You have to be able to, every single document has got a tax on it. This is something that we need to look at, because by the end of the day, it would be better to create a bigger volume of business people and tax them a little than to have just a few business people, which you tax a lot. Because the bigger volume of business people create jobs, the less ones don't. So I'll be fighting, for that position to change. I'll do whatever I can within the Ministry of Agriculture. But of course, this is something I have to work with my colleagues, in other. On the issue of oil crops and farming of palm oil and other nuts so on, particularly in the coast. Yes, I completely agree that this is something that we have missed an opportunity here, because we are only producing about 10% of these oils. Yes, we use them every day. So we are using foreign exchange unnecessarily when we can actually grow palm oil. We have seen countries that have changed completely. Uganda, next door, is growing a lot of their oils now. So there is no reason why we can't do it. But I also know that we have got to work with the extension farmers that Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi also referred to. We have got to have educated extension farmers to change some of the cultural norms that our people have against or for farming certain goods. For example, I know for a fact that AFA has produced a huge quantity of the coconut seedlings that they are trying to distribute. And therefore, there is an education and extension work that is required there to go and tell the people, we have got this, but it's not enough that you go to a farmer and tell them you have got coconut seedlings. How do you plant them? Where do you plant them? What sort of fertilizer do you use? Is it organic fertilizer? Is it mineral fertilizer? So there is quite a bit to be done so that we stop blaming the people and take responsibility ourselves to grow. On the issue of GMO, again, I repeat what I said. But we must also ask ourselves, what is GMO? This genetic modified organism, what is the mischief that this organism, this genetic change is supposed to have done? And there are two sides to this. There is a positive side and there is a negative side. And one of the first things that we must do is ensure that the National Biosafety Authority is sufficiently funded, is sufficiently prepared to deal with GMOs. You cannot deal with GMOs in your country until you have got the institutional framework to make sure that the regulatory framework is there, to make sure that the rules and regulations to deal with those products and services are there, so that we are clear that if a GMO product comes, it will be to the benefit of our nation. And there are some benefits to some of the products. For example, if you look at the cotton growing areas, and you look at BT, and what has happened because of the absence of the worm, you can see that cotton is now increasing. We are now having more cotton. So they are, and let's also forget that genetic modification of plants happens naturally anyway. The maize that we are growing today is not the maize that we originally got from Mexico, centuries ago. It's a different one. Wheat is not the same. What is critical is for us to ensure that we are not used by people for testing their GMO products. If you have got a GMO product that you have designed yourself, use it in your own country. Let's get testimonials of what is happening with that GMO in that country. Then when you have failed or succeeded, let's talk about it then. Otherwise, it's GMOs that we have created for ourselves, using our own scientists, that we should be considering on a first line basis. Mr. Chairman, the National Biosafety Authority is currently very small, unstructured, and I would like to work with this House to ensure that we support it via budgetary allocations and so on, to make sure that that authority is sufficiently funded and properly run to help us with GMO, because the GMO issue is going to become a big thing globally, and so we must be ready for it. I think I spoke about the fertilizers, but one of the things I didn't talk about is the process of getting it to the farmers. There has been, I know, just as a Kenyan, I know there is an outcry out there that whatever subsidy you give can very easily be offset by the transportation costs of where you are getting it from. And therefore, what I intend to do is working with the county governments, ensure that we use the processes in county governments, we use the processes in with the cooperative movement, with the circles, to ensure that this can go as close to the people as possible. There would be no reason whatsoever why any farmer, for example, sitting in a county, should come to Nairobi to go and to come for fertilizer. That is something, is a cost that we should bear. Otherwise, we would be giving with one hand and taking the same with the other. And therefore, I'm not going to preside or supervise over an activity such as that one. The other aspect of fertilizer, I think, that has not been raised, and I also want to mention, is the question of accountability. Accountability of the subsidized fertilizers. And that is to say that we must have proper data in terms of what is a farmer, how much has been allocated to a farmer, how much is going to them. Is it the same quantity or a different quantity? Do we have a situation where I've been allocated 5 bags and I get 3 bags, where another farmer has been allocated 10 bags and get 12 bags? And technology, again, here can help us with the traceability of the fertilizer. We need a platform that can say, as Mutahi Kagwe, I got a message that I can collect 5 bags, but I must also give feedback that I actually received 5 bags. You know, that way, my allocation and what I actually received can be reconciled, and therefore that transparency can kill a lot of the suspicion that is currently within that accountability of the subsidized fertilizers. And yes, extension services, Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi, is a way to go. But I think what I want to clarify is that I do not see the youth as just people who are going to be employed in extension services. I see the youth as the major participants in the activities of farming. You and I and a lot of our age mates, you know, are slowly disappearing. And we need to make sure that our food security is no longer with us. Our food security should be with the young people who are the ones who are getting children and so on. So yes, we are using them as extension people, but we want to mainstream agriculture also to the youth. On the issue of Mheshimiwa Naisula spoke about the budgetary allocations and donor funding for the programs that are going on, particularly in the livestock keeping areas. And I want to say the two things. Number one is that we have got to be the ones driving the donors. We don't want donor-driven projects. Donor-driven projects have got a way of becoming expensive eventually. And you know, Mr. Chairman, this word donor is something that we need to clarify. You will remember, even in the 9th Parliament, we were talking about this definition, donor. Donor is not actually a real donor, as we understand it in the English language. It's a loan. It's actually a bank loan, which is disguised as a donor. So let's make sure that we are talking the right things. These people who come to do the projects in all the areas in agriculture, this is money that will eventually be paid by Kenyans. So we must not take donor-driven ideas. It is our ideas that we should be discussing with the donors. And in the course of that discussion, we must discuss the question of sustainability. What happens when this program is over? Part of the donor fund must be that sustainable aspect, the training of the farmers themselves, the training of the extension people themselves, so that when they are leaving a complete project that is ongoing. And to your question regarding research organizations such as CARO and the others, I think a lot of our research organizations have also been misused. Misused to the extent that we are working with international organizations. They are using our scientists to carry out this research. And what we find and the discoveries that we make our patent out there by others who then bring the results of the research here for us to buy. I think that it is important for us to put a legal framework within our research organization. And I can tell you this is something I tried to introduce at KEMRI, because the same thing was happening with the researchers for health. I think it is also time for us to ensure that the researchers for vet medicines and vet services are also part of that understanding. Yes, we need to work with international organizations, because essentially research is international in its nature. But we must make sure that what we get here and our findings here remain ours. That data, when you see an organization coming to say they want to work with you in research, what they are looking for is data. We must make sure that that data belongs to us. And people can buy from us, not us use our nation, use our scientists to then buy from them.
Thank you. Yes, Ferdinand, ADC Farms.
Yeah, no, I've finished, but I just wanted to request the nominee, in case you're going